Good morning. My name is Meg Detloff and I work for USGS PNAMP. Thanks for joining us for the second meeting of the PNAMP Fish Monitoring Work Group Fish Populations and GIS Boundaries Task Team. A couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. Please mute yourself by clicking the little microphone on your Teams platform. You can see the icon on the screen. Also, please turn off your camera. If you're not speaking, it just kind of helps everybody stay focused. If you don't see the toolbar, I'm kind of displaying here, just wiggle your mouse a little and hopefully it'll pop up on the top or the bottom of your screen, just kind of depending on how you use the platform. You should see a bar that looks pretty similar to this. If you're on the phone, use *6 to mute yourself. If you have questions or feedback, use the chat function. It's the little bubble with the lines here. And let's see. You can also raise your hand and unmute yourself. We can mute you, but we can't unmute you. So you need to be able to unmute yourself. We are recording the meeting and it will be available on our YouTube channel later this week. And so I can't see you guys, but if you have your cameras on, our task leads are going to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves right now.
Hi, I'm Evan Brown, IDFG StreamNet Data Coordinator.
Van, you're muted.
Van, you're muted.
My turn to be silly. Van Hare, PSMFC GIS Manager and StreamNet Support.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. And now it's your turn. Don't worry about turning on your cameras or your microphones. Just simply open up the chat function and introduce yourself with your name and organization. This will kind of help to acquaint you with the chat function, and it helps us keep track of participation. And while you guys are doing that, I will just kind of quickly cover today's agenda. Evan's going to kick off the meeting with a recap of the task and last meeting. Next, Van will go over focus and goals for today. And then we'll do a demonstration, a kind of walkthrough of the Clearwater unit. And then after that, we'll discuss the process, form breakouts, and work through the unit names and boundaries and inputs. And then after that, we'll get the group back together if we do breakout, just kind of depending on participation today. We'll get everybody back together and we'll kind of discuss what happened in the breakout. And we can answer more questions or issues if they came up during the kind of work through. And then we'll wrap it up with next steps. And with that, I will hand it off to Evan.
Thanks, Meg. Very brief recap. The reason why we're here is we wanted to fill in the gaps and expand the management and analysis units or populations and other fish management units that are needed to group and summarize data in StreamNet and coordinated assessments and elsewhere in a similar fashion to what we did for the coordinated assessments, Chinook, Steelhead, Sockeye, Coho, etc. So we're merely here to come up with a standardized, replicative, consistent method to designate, not change existing populations or core areas, but simply to fill in the gaps and start the process off for species or other taxa which may not already have a standardized set of populations or some other fish management unit like that. And so that's what brings us to today. And any questions about that so far? Okay. Hopefully some, if not all of you, are familiar with the concept of populations, potential populations, core areas, etc. One thing in the past, if you were part of the coordinated assessments development, you know that we started off with the NOAA fisheries, the official populations, and then we also brought in the what were called the Cubfwa populations. And so we maintained the integrity of the initial data set, and then we add to it so that we have a complete set of populations or some sort of fish management units which cover the entire range and distribution. So we don't end up with any gaps, including migratory corridors. Good. Oh, so just in general, what the past few meetings we've decided upon is that, and this is no surprise to a lot of folks, is the hydrologic unit codes, the USGS hydrologic unit codes, they're really useful building blocks because they're based upon hydrography, geography, and they tend to place distributions and the hydrography into nice little consistent units. And so we decided that if we start off with the HUC 6/HUC 12, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, then you can use those as the building blocks and then dissolve and sum up into larger units. And all the line work will be the same, so we won't end up with, mismatched lines and so on. And Van has, there's a good example. We were just doing our state wildlife action plan recently, updating it. And so you can see we grabbed the fish distribution first, the generalized fish distribution for red band trout, and then we intersected it with all the HUC 12s, and that would be the probable native range. And then strictly for management reasons, fisheries personnel said, hey, genetic evidence and other evidence indicate that this is a red band trout population. And so we named it as such. And we're going to take the attributes from this GIS exercise and put them into a table along with all the other existing Chinook populations. And I think I'm pretty close to the end of my time. Is there anything else I missed? There's a good shot of the hydrologic unit codes if somebody wasn't familiar with those. I forget, I've been living in the fish distribution and GIS world for so long. Some people might not be familiar with it. Next, please. And so Van, was this your part or mine?
It's still yours, Evan.
Okay. So this is just a data flow diagram or a workflow, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to everybody, but you can see where we take the generalized fish distribution and the HUC 6s and you overlay them or intersect them, and you come up with this new probable native range. In the upper right picture, you can see the generalized fish distributions, and then you intersect them with all those little black and gray polygons. And in the lower picture, you see that it's just the little HUC 6s that are intersected by the line representing the bull trout distribution in this case that gives you your probable native range. Next slide, please. Now, again, like I said earlier, we're not here to update the official populations and core areas. That's what the range-wide assessments and the status assessments are for. But what we are here to do is, if you remember the generalized fish distribution and the probable native range, we're here to fill in all those gaps that lie, in between the mouth of the Columbia and those core areas in brown up above. Now, if we do have any, we can make notes and propose populations that we can save as shapefiles, attributed shapefiles, and we can bring those to the next status assessment / range-wide assessment. Next, please. So you can see now we've taken the core areas and the populations and the bull trout distribution in the blue lines, and you can see the bright orange polygons intersected by the bull trout distribution. That's what our focus is going to be today. We're going to say, hey, all these in the lower Columbia, all these in the lower Snake, maybe they're merely migratory corridors. But hey, some of these up here, they could be potential populations. That's strictly up to the experts in the room that know a whole heck of a lot more about the bull trout distribution, life histories, biology than Van and I do. So that's what we're here to do. Next, please. If we zero in, you can see sort of an example of the bright orange would be where we have bull trout distribution, but we didn't have a core area or a population. And so it's just something that we may want to look at and attribute to sort of fill in the gaps. Next, please. Timelines and proposed data sets. It's a fairly ambitious, but we're going to get most of the work done today. We don't necessarily need to finish it as long as we have proof of concept, and then we can go ahead and get most of it done today. And if we don't, we can contact the experts for those specific areas and finish it up, and then have a revised data set and final products towards the end of the summer. Next, please.
And this is Van's part.
Go for it, Van.
All right, thanks, Evan. So this is kind of a recap. Evan already stated this, but the goal for data focus in is to sort of like agree that we're going to take the Fish and Wildlife Service core areas and populations as they are, and that will be something we're not going to discuss today. So any of the areas that are within those are handled separately. They're going to be standardized in the database for populations table at StreamNet so that we can use it for filtering and displaying data, but we're not going to actually change any of the attributes there. But we are going to focus, like Evan said, on the areas where no populations or core areas currently exist, and walk through geographically using an online app that we have set up for that purpose. And so I think we're ready to launch into a screen sharing here. I guess before I'm looking at the list of we have here, and let me see. Is Marika here, Evan?
I don't see her on the list.
I don't see her.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let me just confirm that you can all see that. Are you all seeing the map app?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Yep. All right, so I just want to quickly kind of give you, this should look familiar from the slides just a minute ago, but what we're looking at initially to start off with is just the Fish and Wildlife Service core areas and local populations directly from Fish and Wildlife Service. And then as Evan described, what we've done is taken the bull trout distribution here in red and created a bull trout native range layer in all the bright orange HUC 12s selected. So we're gonna zoom in and talk about specific areas. And one of the first areas we thought we would start with as an example is this Clearwater River area. Just gonna zoom in to get some labels on for the benefit of that. All right, and then I'm gonna turn this off because I don't. So Evan, I don't know if you want to, or if anybody else from Idaho or from wherever is familiar with this area wants to speak to how you might want to handle this area.
Well, I have spoken with Marika before, okay. And so it would have been nice to go ahead and go through it with her, but not necessarily critical. Okay. And in addition to that, she's already standing in for Brett Bowersox. So that brings us to another key point here is this is draft until, designated final by the whole group. And so if we do want to go back and change anything from this work group session, we can, and people know how to get a hold of us. So we'll do so. So I think at this point, whoops. Yeah, there we go. Do you want to drive, Van, and I'll talk?
Sure.
All righty.
So
what Bowersox and Dobos and I were thinking was if you can pan Yeah, no, go the other direction. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so everybody's familiar with Lewiston. We've got the Clearwater River underneath here, and it's, you know, a big, relatively warmer, slower river than its tribs. Not right now, this time of year, but most of the time it is. And so, plus it's been a heck of a lot more altered than a lot of its tribs. So we were thinking that we would select that first, let's see, squinting, the lowermost Clearwater River, Huck 6. Nope, yep. And we would take it all the way up and just the Clearwater River main stem.
Okay,
And
say
if
when.
you would draw a line, yeah, through all those, and yep.
Further?
Yep, keep going. All the way up to the Tom Taha Creek.
Okay, do you want to capture
Keep
the
going up.
lower Orofino or no? Leave that.
Do not do Lower Orofino, just the main stem
Okay.
Clearwater, please. Yeah. And got
Okay.
it. Okay, and it looks like you got the Lower Lolo Creek. So, yeah. And stay south, excellent. And one more. Got it, perfect. And again, not really, we were just going to reduce this to a migratory corridor for bull trout. And so following the coordinated assessment StreamNet conventions, this would be Clearwater River, lower main stem for pop name. Yeah, pop name, Clearwater River, lower main stem, bull trout. Wow, you're a lot better typer than I am. There we go. And check and check. And pop status, they are definitely extant.
Okay.
And I can't read the next one.
Record note, if you want to add any comment, this is so, you know, what we're walking through here is a fairly small handful of attributes that we're looking to tackle. A lot of the other things that we do carry in the populations table can be derived. We don't have to actually code them here. But the main one is fish unit type or population unit type. Whether or not we want to assign it to a core area, or if there's one we wanted to reference there, not necessarily you know, appropriate here, but we assigned it a name. These have already been coded with bull trout as the common species name, pop status, extent, and then we can, this is a free text comment field if we have a comment that we wanted to add in.
Which
and
I do.
defined by is sort of the compiled by. So here, would we assign that to IDFG in your case, Evan?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And then a record note, please.
Yep.
Double check with Dobos and Bower socks.
All right. Dobos?
Yep. Perfect. Cool.
Right. So once we've coded the fish, the pop type basically, or fish unit type, the polygons changed color and let us know that we've got those coded. We can move on to the next area. So in this case, what we're doing just behind the scenes, we're editing a layer that's on top of the probable native range, which is the orange layer. And when it's all done, that will be the building block or the starting point for defining the new population or fish units within the main table. I see Russ, welcome. You have a question?
Yeah,
Right,
I just had a question on the choice of the names for the population that you chose for the main stem. If there are multiple populations above it, how do you settle on the lower main stem name? Was that is that a new name period, or was that linked to a specific name for one of the populations above.
I'll handle that. That was a new name based upon the standards and conventions in the coordinated assessments and StreamNet populations table.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure it was, if it was new, that followed it. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, Evan, should we keep going?
Yeah, please. See the two, no, there's 3 red HUC 12s.
Yeah.
Zero in on those, please.
Okay, those
And
are.
turn on the generalized FIS distribution. Ah, red on red.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize to any of my fellow color challenged people in the room. But you can see those red lines in Bimerick Creek and Fire Creek. And what's going on there is, and this happens all the time with the status assessments and the range-wide assessments, we have new data where, you know, initially these areas we were not certain. We did not have the data in hand, or there was not any data indicating bull trout presence in these streams. Now we do have access to those data, or they have collected those data. And so this would be another scenario which we'd like to handle today. It's sort of making a note for the next range-wide assessment or status assessment where, you know, if we want to, we can say, hey, this is a potential population for the next range-wide assessment, status assessment to deal with. And so if you would go ahead and select, it's Bimerick Creek. It's the lower leftmost HUC 12. No, lower left. Yep.
Okay. Just the one?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they have huge falls. Yeah, they're gonna be.
So here's a case where we don't have a direct, you know, corollary there because the Fish and Wildlife Service actually went further and split that. So Bimerick Creek here is a larger area. Bimerick Lochshaw. But we can put a note there if that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, record note. New data indicates bull trout presence. And that's good. Oh, and what is that? Defined by or source IDFG.
In this case, I'm not going to actually change the unit type. It's just a note for the record.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that way, you know, when we show up to the next range-wide assessment or status assessment for bull trout, we'll have all these data and nothing will be overlooked or forgotten. So, okay, next, please. Good. Yeah, so we're sort of filling in the gaps. The next would be, so again, Van, if you would, go ahead and turn off the probable native range, please. Yeah, so see how we still have that gap, the gray, where we don't have any tan or green or purple polygons, and we don't have any of the new green polygons. So what I'd like to do, go ahead and turn it back on, please, Van, the probable native range. So go ahead and select, this would be the Middle Fork, Clearwater, and Clear Creek. And so we're just going to say, you know, make a note that, hey, this is another potential population. And
Just
so
this
if
one
you
here?
would, starting at Maggie Creek, draw a polygon, freehand polygon.
Okay.
And select Maggie Creek and go south and select those other HUC 6s. Come back around. Yep, perfect. Bam. All right.
Okay.
And so that would be the dominant, that would be Middle Fork, Clearwater, And
And you want to call that
potential
potential
population?
population?
Yes, sir. And name, the Middle Fork Clearwater River. And tribs.
And tribs?
Yeah. Bull trout. Perfect. Pop status. Alrighty, at this point, so we've gone through a number of different examples, and once we're done with this and we've said that they are extant. And IDFG, please, and save. Should go, oh, in blue. Excellent. So now, if you zoom out, please, Van. Good. Yeah, see, so now we've basically connected, you know, the rest of the core areas and populations. We've covered the generalized fish distribution for bull trout, and now we have, you know, we don't have any gaps in the core areas or populations, and so we don't, you know, we'll help answer some of those questions that Russ and folks like he had about, you know, why do we have such patchy, you know, core areas and so on. So does this make sense to everybody? And do those examples, those are just, you know, some of the scenarios that we figured we'd be going through today. Does that make sense? I don't see any hands raised. Oh,
Yeah,
David.
go ahead, Dave. Yeah.
Hi,
David?
so I'm guessing the purple and green are the local populations that I sent to you, Van.
Yes.
Well, just a note is sometimes they're created from a portion of a HUC6 and aggregated with other full HUC6s and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
Just want to throw that out there with this demo.
Yep. Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify here, like, and Clear Creek here is a great example that in all of these that we are actually looking at with the patchiness, these are in StreamNet as unknown habitat use. So when we say we have new data, we have to be careful there, is because this is some of the current range exercise that we're doing now is focusing on these areas. And these appear to be based from 2004 layer that was added to the 2019 StreamNet. So we want to be careful that there is some discrepancies between the process that was used for the service to do current range back in 2004, for example, and what the state may have done. So these unknowns are based on that it's likely habitat and there's no barrier, but at that time there was no data. And many of these still don't have data. So we want to make sure we're keeping potential when we talk about these, as well as that the StreamNet does still have the habitat use as unknown, which indicates that difference between the service map at that time and what is now being used in StreamNet.
Yeah, good point. I think for sure, I think one of the key reasons that we're doing this, Mark, is to support data display and filtering, right? And so that's why we're being careful. I mean, we're trying to be careful. I appreciate the input. Any other feedback on what the terminology we should be using is. We're trying to be clear about potential, and also in the case of the migratory corridors area, you know, term, if there's a better term, I'm all ears. The idea is just to be able to display and filter data and allow some operations that are better suited to having an aerial extent for, you know, clicking on with the mouse on a map and reporting back a value, rather than having linear features be the only thing you can work with. So in the case of the migratory corridor, I mean, I personally, I get that maybe that's not what you would traditionally entertain as being population, you know, in that sense, which is kind of why we're using this term fish unit / population boundary, because some cases it's a fish management area or unit, or in this case, just, you know, really is for data display purposes. I don't know, Evan, if you have anything to add to that.
Nope, that was good. Other than we can, as I recall, Van, there is an unknown or undefined choice under, what was it, pop type?
Yeah, a no value would leave it with a basically probable native range is still an underlying definition. But yeah, if that's what you were getting at.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we don't give it any, if we leave it bright orange, it's still within the probable native range based on the distribution data set. Russ, I see your hand.
Russ, you're
Sure.
still muted.
Sorry, thank you. Hit the wrong one. I was thinking back to my original question and comment related to when you do fish distribution and define a population. I was thinking of NOAA's GIS layer specifically, that in the main stem Columbia, below the NTI and other areas where they have these corridors, they define those as, you know, outside. There wasn't a population name. They just had outside the legal limit. So it was. So I think it's just a question of looking for some consistency. If we're looking at these corridors and connections for distribution, are they really going to be new populations, or are they just habitat that in population areas that are defined as a, you know, how does NOAA define it? And does it have a name for the Columbia River, or is it just blank with outside the legal limit? And we've tried to adopt that consistency, or do we, that's just one question for like these large corridors that we might be looking at.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And again, we are not here to say this is a new population and it needs to be added to the existing core areas and populations. We're here to fill in the gaps that you were talking about and say, hey, this is either a potential population or simply a migratory corridor. And just sort of get a more complete picture of the bull trout distributions and ranges. And in addition to that, help inform the next update to the populations and core areas. When is the next status assessment or range-wide assessment? Van, or I mean, David, you know that? Is that next year?
They're actually doing this status assessment right now.
Right now.
Not sure when that is. Dan Melfi is on. He could speak to that more.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan couldn't make the meeting. He's away, so he asked me to sit in and comment as best I could. I'm coming into this kind of cold, so I appreciate any patience with my questions. The interesting thing here, of course, is that we have critical habitat that's designated that's outside of what we call our local populations or core areas. And what we've done in green here is an example of that. That's critical habitat is FMO, foraging, migrating, and overwintering. So that falls within our distribution models. It has its own critical habitat name. We don't call it a population. As I said, we use the terminology local population to define our population units within a core area. And that encompasses the spawning and rearing habitat, both of a resident and the migratory population. So as long as we stick with, there should be no confusion if you say population consistently when we say local population. Where confusion could creep in, I guess, is if the names are radically different.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we were trying to steer clear of. And that's why, you know, right from the get-go, we said we're not going to mess with the official populations in core areas. We're simply here to fill in the gaps and do so in a standardized, replicable way that is consistent with both coordinated assessments and StreamNet standards and conventions, and also resonates with what you just said, Mark, where, you know, this is just a foraging migratory corridor, et cetera. And so this is in addition to what is already there.
And Damon Holzer left, he's with Noah, left a comment in the chat. They are in the legally defined listing DPS, but we didn't give them population status. It was a shared migratory corridor.
Excellent. So that fits our attributes and our schema very well. Thank you.
So Evan, while we're in this area, did you have any other, with talking to Marika, did you have any other suggestions for these guys here, or?
We did not. If anything, I should probably let somebody else chime in and go through an example. I see Kurt Tardy's in the room, or Mark. Were there any areas which you were interested in? Go ahead and zoom out, please, Van.
Sure. Stay in this general vicinity, though. Right?
Yes. Yeah, and maybe zoom out some more.
We have Ace Riverman on too. He's with Montana.
So we've got that connected. Good. And yeah, really, for me, there's I'm not even gonna go near. If Marika was here, we could talk about the Grand Ronde and northeastern Oregon, but I've only been stomping over there a few times. So is there anybody else in the room who would like to take care of the Grand Ronde or Hell's Canyon? No? Okay, go ahead and zoom out, please, Van. And let's see if there's anything over in Kurt Tardy's neck of the woods. Looks like it's all covered. Yeah, I don't see any gaps there. Do you see anything, Kurt?
He says it looks covered to me.
Oh, and by the way, hey, Megan,
yeah,
and everybody, I do not have the chat available on my Microsoft Teams.
Oh.
And I can't figure out a way to turn it on. If anybody else has been in the same situation, I am using the Microsoft Teams app. I am not just blasting it through my browser.
Okay.
I've done the same thing. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I lost the chat function and I couldn't find it, and I didn't find. And then a week later, it popped back up on my system.
Yeah, Aaron
I went a full week
having
without
problems. Yeah, Aaron was just having problems too, where she didn't have it and it just popped back up. So if anyone's having problems with the chat, I mean, you guys are more than welcome to unmute and don't be shy and talk. But I can see it, Evan, so I'm keeping an eye on it.
Okay, thank you.
For you guys, yeah.
Alrighty. Well, not seeing any other gaps in the probable native range that need to be filled in, I would go ahead and select that. Let's go ahead and move down to Lewiston again and try to grab the whole lower Snake River extent, please.
Okay, how far would you go from where to where?
No. Lower Snake, please. From Lewiston down to the confluence with the Columbia, please.
Okay.
And no, you're going up. Okay, you're gonna have to. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to go from Lewiston downstream to the Tri-Cities area. Yeah. Yep.
Do you want to go all the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna designate that migratory corridor for our purposes here. Yeah, and good.
There.
Yep. And it looks like you may have grabbed a trib up
right
there.
there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so just go along the southern edge. Nope, you did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's all right. Yeah, stick to that southern edge. You should be fine. Yep. Perfect. And does anybody from Washington or Oregon have anything to say about this? I was thinking that we were just going to continue the migratory corridor. I can't see the chat, so if you have something, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, Michelle or Aaron, if you guys, I'm not sure which regions of Washington and Oregon you both are in.
This is Michelle. I'm usually out of Lower Columbia, so I'm not super familiar with the east side stuff. So I'm gonna have to check with some of our bull trout bios on this stuff. So
let's go. Yeah, migratory corridor and population name, Snake River, Lower Main Stem, bull trout.
Yeah, this is Aaron. I'm participating as a kind of an end user of population data, and I'm not a bull trout expert, so it'd be someone else in our agency that would need to provide input on this.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, and Casey Bleasner was here at the beginning of the meeting, but she must have had to duck out. So, and obviously you guys, if you just let us know like specific contacts for some of these regions, we can reach out to them and speak to them specifically and kind of get input. So if you guys know who to direct us to, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, Ethan Crawford with WWW would probably be the best representative for that region and section.
Okay. Thanks, Russ.
All right, so next part, common name, got it. Pop status. We have generalized fish distribution, so they're extant. Record note, double check with whoever Russ just said.
Ethan Crawford.
Double check with Ethan. Oh, I know Ethan Crawford. Gotcha. Defined by,
I can say this for now.
Okay.
That's sort of a regional generic.
Excellent. And save.
All right.
Alrighty. And is there anybody in the room who can speak to the lower or mid Columbia or upper Columbia? Anybody who wants to speak up regarding the lower or mid or upper Columbia? Because yeah, there's a huge long swath. Nobody's hands are going up.
No.
Oh.
Michelle, did you say you were Lower Columbia?
I am, but not so much on bull trout.
Okay.
A lot is now wanted and all kinds of
Oh,
stuff.
so Mark, you're sitting in for Fish and Wildlife Service, correct?
Yeah, as I said, I came in cold, so
Okay.
yeah. What are you asking about you said the upper Columbia? What are you terming the upper Columbia?
It'd probably be easier to say what geographic area would you feel comfortable speaking to? Are there any gaps that you know, in the orange polygons, are there any gaps that you would feel comfortable speaking to?
I'm not sure what orange polygons you're talking about here.
They're brighter orange.
Where are we focusing?
The question is if you have an area of of expertise that you feel comfortable zooming to, we can go there. Or if anybody else does.
The kind of, not the reddish orange, Mark, the kind of regular orange. I don't even know how to explain that color of
how about
orange.
These guys here.
Yeah, can you zoom into what you're calling a gap?
Well, for example, all of these areas here are in the probable native range, but they're not within a core area or population as defined by Fish and Wildlife Service now. So those are the areas that we're looking at. And the question is, you know, whether or not they should be coded as migratory, or if there's something that might warrant calling a potential population.
Not on the Columbia, obviously, but you know, another spot where there's no core areas like Washington Coast.
Yeah, I think we probably want our local fish and wildlife biologists to address these.
Okay.
I said we do run into some of the different objectives that StreamNet had with the distribution versus what the Fish and Wildlife Service has for our critical habitat and establishing core areas and local populations. And I'm not familiar with some of the more recent work that may be happening, so I'd be much more comfortable if Judy Neibauer or if Erin Kitten Brittle is Cuddle Britton, I always mess up her name, if they're going to be available for working with the portal.
Okay. And we can do that. I mean, that's, I guess, sort of the main benefit of this group at this point would just be to sort of like, you know, what do you think of this approach? Following the standards that we have in the CAX population table, and you know, for example, adding a few different population types that weren't previously there, like the migratory corridor and the potential population. If we don't have specific, you know, bull trout expertise in the room to steer us to start defining these things, that's okay. We can follow up with the names that have been mentioned and just kind of work through this. But from a process standpoint, open to feedback.
And I think too, Evan, Van, the goal was to kind of do this through various species, correct?
Right. So bull trout is sort of like a pilot to proof the concept. But the idea is we would use a similar approach for other species, including resident species that are, you know, on the list of being a priority to get this type of data to at least support data display and filtering. I know white sturgeon's been discussed. Russ, I don't know if you have other comments you want to make there, but this is sort of really just a proof of concept of process, so that once we get this done, we could potentially move forward with different biologists with the right expertise to address the other species.
Van, this is David. We'll try. We have a good amount of GIS data. Will we just be focusing on that? We're asking local experts to fill in, because we're actually editing that range data right now, and I've done a lot of contacts with local biologists to clarify that, revise it. So I'm just curious how that would play into this. You know, species don't have the GIS data, so we're kind of a different approach, you know.
Right. Does Fish and Wildlife Service plan to identify areas that are not traditionally what would be called populations or local populations, like these migratory areas, or
no,
you know, areas that are unknown for habitat use type? I heard Mark mention that if it was unknown, they maybe didn't go there. Is that still the case? Because that might be, you know, what's still requiring us to want to have a polygon to associate data to, whether or not the use type is called out in a way that, you know, makes it eligible for critical habitat.
it's going to vary across the different states. I know Idaho's got most of the unknowns, and we're trying to make a decision on whether to keep those or not. But so far, like I just did Oregon yesterday, and I had to add a few streams, but the majority is taking smaller tributaries out that probably wouldn't affect a local population polygon. They were thought to be there at one time and then not seen in the last 10 years. So we're taking those out. So I would caution against getting too far ahead on this, because then we'll have to make some changes. I mean, I'm sure
Right.
it'll be a big deal to edit it later, but.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, David. It's a very good point. I say there was some discrepancies or differences, let's say, not necessarily discrepancies, but in some of the using the data and professional judgment to determine the current range. So there's some of this is still being discussed. I have been talking with Brett Bauer, Sox, as well as John Earhart, our fish and wildlife biologist in the Clearwater, and of course Brett's with IDFG. So they're still kind of discussing how to best categorize some of these and display them as part of the current range map.
Oh, good. So have either of you have you seen anything in our process, in our methodology or terminologies, which give you any concerns, any heartburn, or do you see it as a logical extension of, taking off from whatever you all do and update, and then maybe we just hold this process off until you all have an updated bull trout core area population and critical habitat?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. So I'm interested to see how it ends up, and any possible confusion that folks might have with another version of kind of populations. I think that's going to cause some confusion if we call them populations when we have a different set of populations. But that's really my only concern. I think the methodology is good. It's probably going to overlap a lot with what we already have, except for, our populations are based on spawning and rearing. So all this migratory stuff is, another layer to it. But
Right.
I don't know if I would call them populations at that point. It's just migratory.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So just to dial back a bit, if all we do is identify areas that fill the gaps, that may not rise to being called something in your world of attributes, but would still warrant having a polygon to use for data display. That's all we're doing. So, and that's why we use the term migratory corridor or potential population, or one we haven't really used yet is fish management unit. Just to be able to say, hey, we're not trying to confuse folks by calling it a core area or a population, right, that you guys call it. But we still want to be able to throw it on the map and just filter it spatially.
One thing we're probably going to end up doing is for like the Snake River, Columbia, other large migratory corridors, using the NHD polygon representation for those, because we need to be able to look at projects that are within a certain distance of those rivers, and the line is
Bingo.
Not as accurate, obviously. So the polygon representation is going to be a lot skinnier than Hook 6's, but for consultation purposes, we need to. That's something we're trying to remedy. We're using the polygon representation of the stream river instead of the line.
So for the main stems, you'd use a 2D river. Yeah. And that's been discussed before as well. I think, that's an option to consider for data display. And I'm wondering, do you have an idea of the timeline for completing what you guys are doing, the updates?
I'm hoping by the end of the year it'll be done. I've been working on it, and also have to work with the biologists and their timelines.
Right.
And I appreciate that, because these are issues to kind of wrestle with, and they do have repercussions. So as far as the comment of adding additional critical habitat or local populations or core areas from the Fish and Wildlife Services role, we didn't do that with these areas because we didn't have actual data. So as I discussed, some of these are unknown based on the StreamNet layer that you guys are working with. So we would require more surveys in these areas, particularly to establish spawning and rearing is happening there, so that we could designate it as another local population. So right now we've got a fixed number of core areas and local populations that we are using. We do have some potential local populations that are still kind of a gray area. But in terms of what we've designated as core areas and local populations for our recovery plan, those are the ones that we are currently working with. And to change those, it would take, again, some actual presence data to go through that process.
And Russ, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it was just a follow-up comment or question just on processes and timelines. And I agree, there's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service layer is going to act as the official layer for what's out there. Absent having this, for work that I'm doing with some of our contractors, we're trying to identify these river corridors, and we talked about using 2D river networks versus the Huck 6 polygons last time, and I think the interim goal, whatever we can produce from this effort, is still acknowledging that the official record still lies with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but this layer is being, if we can generate this layer to have it as something that can be used to communicate, observations and where the range is, because we need to have cross references for our consultations ourselves, for which areas and rivers, for work that we fund. If people are doing work that they say they're doing stuff for bull trout, we just want to make sure that we have verification of the potential range, that it's a migration corridor, something else that's important. So I'm just hoping that we're not going to get to a point where this effort is derailed and we just wait for. I'm hoping that we can get to the point of continued collaboration, and that we recognize the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is going to produce an updated product, but we can still establish this process to move forward with this concept. And once that gets updated, we further update this product again once the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finalize their new updated one. So hopefully there's always just continued management and integration.
Yeah, thanks. Good information from everybody. First and foremost, Van, you have control of the screen. Do you have that slide, or do you have, by any chance, the table for populations open? Regarding the confusion between the official populations and the populations which we may or may not add, we went through the exact same scenario with the official long-term populations from NOAA fisheries for Chinook, for example. And then, we rapidly, for example, the whole Clearwater River drainage didn't have a population from the NOAA fisheries. And, and it only takes a passing knowledge to think about Chinook distribution in the Clearwater River drainage in Idaho to understand that, hey, there's plenty of Chinook there, and yeah, they have populations, or some sort of fish management unit that we need to define in order to complete the picture for all the users, and also to make tidy little polygons with which we can intersect data. and say, hey, all these new survey points fall within this potential population or fall within this migratory corridor, et cetera. And oh, lo and behold, yeah, there is spawning and rearing there. So make it a potential population, stuff like that. And so in that table, which I guess, do you still have the presentation open? Ben?
It's on Meg's screen. I'm not
What's
sure.
on Meg's?
You're referring to the
Yeah.
GIS.
Yeah. Do you want me to
So-
share it?
Long story short, what we did is we just maintained the attributes of the original NOAA populations, and then we added in the new Cubfwa populations, et cetera. And so it was, you know, if folks wanted to, they could filter out the new Cubfwa populations and just go with the old NOAA fisheries. And we could do the exact same thing with the bull trout populations and the other bull trout fish management units. Does that make sense, David?
Yeah, I think
There we
that's a good way to go
Okay.
about it. They're just flagged, attributed as such, and
Cool.
carry it that way.
All righty.
Yeah, to the point, like the defined by field that we used when we were coding things earlier. So defined by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would be, and also, you know, and it would have an official set of attributes from Fish and Wildlife Service, if that's helpful. So that, yeah, if we want to move forward with this, not to derail things that are needed for regional data management, we by all means would, you know, reintegrate the next version that Fish and Wildlife Service comes out with for the core areas and populations, and not be competing with those.
Well, I don't think there'll be any new core areas, no new critical habitats. That stuff is, you know, takes a long time to happen. The local populations, I would be surprised if there's any new ones. There might be a couple, but I'd say maybe a couple drop out too. I don't think it'll be a big revision.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually that brings us to a key point in all this, just to sort of circle back around to the agenda and to the task description. This is just the first iteration. This is basically the pilot for the bull trout and expanding what we've learned from the anadromous fishes development of the data. So I would say that, yeah, we go ahead and keep on moving forward with the process and have that draft ready, stick with our timeline. And then once the new updated Fish and Wildlife Service data become available, then we go ahead and we start looking at the updates, you know, anything that we need to change per that. Yeah, they've already shared, you know, their original data sets with us, so we can just keep on using this collaboration to come up with a product that's even better. You know, it fills in the gaps and doesn't leave things, you know, folks scratching their head. So anybody, does that sound reasonable to everybody? Or does anybody have anything to add or clear up? Yeah, there's our timeline, including methods for the final product meeting. Good.
Michelle left a comment. Jamie Lamperth for WDFW sits on the Lewis Bull Trout group for WDFW. He may be able to help us with some of these areas. Thanks, Michelle. That's great.
Okay.
Excellent.
Russ?
Yeah, Russ, go ahead.
Yeah, just I'm just putting it in the chat. One note, going back to the map where you were just at, I don't know if you have anybody in the Yakima, and I just wanted to ask how you designate designate the purples. I missed probably the first 2 minutes of the meeting, but when you looked at and had the Yakima up, there's a purple population that's designated as potential population, and I know there at the last the 2019 science workshop for the Yakima. There's been lots of questions about that area, and they've done extensive eDNA studies in the Upper Teanaway and showed that there's been absolutely no bull trout use in that section. There used to be historically, but the eDNA studies that they continue to do show that while bull trout were continuing to be identified in the other watersheds, they had no signs and detection of bull trout using that area. So I was wondering, by population definition and distinction, and NOAA status review, or NOAA lists status of species as, you know, extinct, extirpated. I was wondering just what is the classifications that you guys have? Is there for areas that we know that, you know, they historically had stuff? Yeah, I'm hoping that the map, there was a comment that was made, I'm hoping that the maps don't just remove those sections and those populations just disappear. But it's just a question that would those populations still be listed as a population unit name, but maintain extirpated or extinct or something to that factor?
Yeah, I mean, some of those were local populations, and then we changed them to potential because there haven't been any observations there. And particularly for like Washington and Idaho, those were created like early 2000, 2004. I didn't get involved until like 2009 when we were doing critical habitat. So I've been maintaining those and trying to keep them up to date as biologists find things, but that's what my approach was, not to lose anything, but to make it potential. But we didn't record that sort of change in there. It just, I think I have a spreadsheet that has some of it from 2017 or 18 that just had some justifications for those. Our last edit of local populations, but that's some of the background for you, if that helps.
Yeah, it does. I was just wondering if there is a point that if the data continues to show that there are, while it was potential because it's unknown, but the data comes in and shows that there is no evidence, does that change like a status like a extinct or extirpated, and change how recovery plans may designate and use that area? Or I was just wondering your nomenclature. What?
We probably should have a historic category, but we don't have that now. At least something I'll bring up with the other fish and wildlife biologists and see what they think and when they would have time to kind of review and label those as historic instead of potential or local population. And it's been changing a lot, you know, with over time. Get different biologists, and they weren't around when most of it was done. There's only like Judy's the only one left, I think, besides myself from the effort in 2009. So, yeah, like the Oregon and Montana ones, we didn't have any polygons when I started, so we had to go from scratch. But Washington and Idaho are some of our 2000 effort. 2000, 2004. Luckily, we had some polygons to work with and didn't have to do it all from scratch.
Yeah, good questions, Russ. All right, guys. Well, we're sitting at 10:10, and we were going to do breakouts, but not sure what you guys are feeling now. I think we're missing a couple of specific bull trout folks.
Yeah, it sounds like we should maybe hold off and do some targeted sessions with those folks based on the comments and the names that were provided. So this has been helpful just in terms of getting a gut check on the process and some of the terms used. I don't know, Evan, what do you think? How should we move forward?
Like you said, I would go ahead and I'd feel comfortable getting together with a few folks in Idaho and just doing a targeted approach with the specific groups. It's good to have a large group with diverse backgrounds and histories at this first meeting to validate and refine the process. So I'm comfortable moving on. For instance, that Spokane River part, we could give the folks up north a call real quick and pretty much knock that out real fast. So, yeah, I say we do that.
Okay, and Aaron Gilbert too, he said regarding the bull trout in Oregon, he can send us contact info for ODF&W biologists that he knows that can contribute. So we appreciate you guys being here today because it's hard for us to connect the dots on who's where and who's doing what and who's like the kind of area expert. So I appreciate some of you guys being here and kind of being able to see where we are having our own gaps and help us fill in the blanks and connect with the right people to kind of get this stuff filled in. Michelle, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just curious if there's other areas that have more gaps for Washington. Can you let me know what those are, and then I can find you the right person to talk to?
Yeah.
Totally.
If that's helpful.
Yeah, you can see these, the peninsula. And
Evan, Van,
coast.
I stole your screen, so we can't see your map anymore.
Oh yeah, sorry.
You're breaking up, Van.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if it helps to show my screen again, but we can follow up with you, Michelle.
Perfect.
Uh-oh. Is it me or is Van frozen?
No, it's just you. David said Stephanie, I'm going to slaughter her last name, Gunsel, is their contact for Fish and Wildlife Service and ODFW, and she's a bit of a hybrid state and federal employee, so she'd probably be a super good contact for us. All right. Well, I think what we'll do, guys, is just probably do a wrap up now and then give everybody an hour back in their day, and then we'll go strategically target these bull trout folks. And then we'll be able to send out, kind of, I forget the terminology you guys were using. Proof of concept. So we'll follow up with them and kind of get this solidified a bit more and get people to work through some of the corridors and then send you guys out some information. But let me share my screen again. Here's the contact info again for the guys. The meeting summary and recording for this will be available by the end of the week. So you'll be able to distribute this to some of the folks that weren't here. Judy would be able to watch some of the video if she wants to, and some of the other folks, the bull trout folks specifically, would have access to the video to watch it, kind of get them caught up on what we're trying to do. And then we have, links to the homepage and links to the specific task page for the population names and GIS boundaries task. And then just a link to April's fish monitoring work group meeting. And then if you guys want to join the listservs, or if you guys need any information, or et cetera, just feel free to reach out to me and I can connect the dots for you. Otherwise, did you guys have anything else to add?
No, I thank you guys for your time, and for the leads. If you have any other leads, please just send them our way.
Evan, are you okay? I don't know if your computer's being
that's
funky.
good. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We appreciate your time today.
Excellent.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Bye.